EEG Podcast, Episode 3. We have a very special guest today, and his name is Chad Freeman. Chad Freeman is the site manager at Loxahatchee. At our Loxahatchee location, which is a turf store, and we're going to get all into that today about what a turf store is amongst the different dealerships that we have at Everglades Equipment.
I would not classify Loxahatchee as a turf store. I would classify them as a combination store.
Preach.
They have almost everything that we sell, they sell. So they don't have an overabundance of turf or ag. They sell both. So they're a combination store.
Combination store. So let's just get right to it. I think today we're going to cover Chad Freeman, his path from being a kid who swept the floors at Everglades to the site manager, a true American story of a young man that went from the bottom to now runs the store fully operational as one of the best in the business. So Chad, let's get right to it. What's up?
What's up, guys?
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir. So Chad, let's start with this. The background. Can you tell us about how you got into the equipment business, how you got into Everglades, or maybe even start from before that?
Well, really, it was right after high school. I came to Everglades, applied, didn't really know anything about the company as much other than that it was just a John Deere dealership, and applied for the yard guy position and did that for.
Hang on. I would say go back even further. Tell me, like in school, did you care about working on things? Did you care about were you a great student? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I just mean tell me a little bit about what you thought about academics.
So it was
Start with the student part.
So I mean, we were mediocre students. Me and my brother went to Brain Christian, and then ended up finishing at Royal Palm. But when I was younger, my parents used to joke because I would take like the light sockets apart, and I would take like a VCR apart. And back then there wasn't DVD players, so I mean VCR is showing my age. But I would take it apart, put it back together, still work. So I felt like I accomplished something. But we kind of did dumb stuff like that when we were growing up, and then when I graduated high school, I was working at Publix as a bag boy, and then Bud's Chicken and Seafood.
Hey, Bud's Chicken. I didn't know that.
Stand-up place. Yeah, it's great.
What'd you do at Bud's?
I was the cashier and the backup fry man. You know, so if you needed your chicken,
was the assistant.
I was the assistant fry clerk. You know. Yeah.
Okay.
That was his first foray into management.
Assistant fry man. You know. And then I worked at Everglades for a little short spell with some OG managers in the company, and then bounced around a little bit, and then came back to Everglades after I graduated the police academy, because there wasn't really anywhere to go and needed a job. Even though I graduated, we were waiting to get hired kind of deal. And Jenna actually hired me back. She was the current service manager at the time, and I was the yard guy and the truck driver, and did a little bit of mechanicing too when we needed to. Did a lot of the pre-deliveries for our store. Back then, gators came in on a pallet, and the tires were in the bed of the gator. So we would have to lift it off, put all this, basically bolt the bed on, bolt the tires on, and then did a lot of the residential mowers. Back then, we were also doing all of the mowers at Lowe's and Home Depots. So we would do 15 to 20 at a time, and I'd go to all the Lowe's and Home Depots in Palm Beach County and do all those. And then was a full-time delivery guy, and we're running a wrecker, so we didn't have to have a CDL or anything like that.
Well, here, let's hunker down there for a second, because, you know, I'm sure there's a lot of people that might find some interest in just like, I know you just kind of described what is all entailed in a yard guy at a John Deere dealership. But like, what does your day-to-day look like as the yard guy?
So, I mean, historically at our store, because of our size, we'd open up the gates and we would have to move out 15 to 20 tractors that are either in for repair or there for new sales.
So right out of the gate,
you're moving tractors at between 7 and 8 o'clock and you learn right off the bat.
Yeah,
like
you
it's
learn
either
right off the
you
bat.
learn or you die, right?
I remember that. Like, it was like, if you don't know how to drive, they're all kind of different, kind of the same, but kind of different. You have to quickly pick up on how each thing operates.
Quick. And I mean, one might have a loader, one might not. One might have a manual transmission, one might have hydrostatic. So it was really quick. You had to kind of learn each breed of tractor, each level of tractor, and we're working on 6s and 7s still there at that store. Still a little bit, nothing really much bigger than that. But you get a big 7 with duals on it. Sometimes it barely fits in the gate, so you're making sure you're backing up and pulling out back. And we hadn't stretched our wings a little bit out back as much at that point. So
what time is this in the morning?
7 o'clock. Yeah, 7 o'clock. And I mean, you had to have the equipment out by 7:30, or you were getting an earful. We had to be able to get all the mechanics could go get their tractors that they were working on that morning or that day. So they would you'd have to get everything out of the way so they could get to their stuff. So we'd pull all that out, and we'd pull 10, 15 tractors out front right on that roadway on the way into the store from the John Deere sign, and we'd put all new tractors all the way out there because the front yard was just a retention at that point. So
the problem, and I'm going to interject here, the problem was we severely underestimated our needs at that location. We bought that location in the late 1990s, 98, 99. We opened in 2001. But at one point, we owned 18 acres of land there, and then we subsequently sold a significant amount of that to the hospital. So, at the time, it was good for us because it allowed us to really do that whole location debt-free.
Right.
So after we sold the land, it basically paid for all the construction. But, hindsight is crystal clear, and we wish we would have kept maybe 2 more acres to be able to not have a yard man driving tractors out at 7 in the morning.
Which that was how many years ago?
That was, so I started back at the store in like 2008. Right, I graduated 2008 from the police academy, so I started.
And this has nothing to do with anything, but what y'all did to solve this problem was put the gate around the retention pond.
So that's part of it, and then Mike had this great idea of this little piece of easement that's behind our property that we tilled up and then put a fence
over there.
Yeah,
but I just wanted to make the point that actually the fence around the barrier probably could have been done back in 2008.
Yeah, well, we were fearful that we were going to cause
a long time to flesh out.
That's the truth.
Wild,
Yeah. I think it was a little bit of money and a little bit of fearful of having issues with permits in Palm Beach County and stuff like that, because we're already in a tough scenario having a dealership, a commercial dealership right there. But we did end up getting that done, and that freed up a lot of space. We can hold a lot more equipment without having to move a lot of stuff.
Which really allows the customers to be able to be hands-on.
And they don't have to walk through the shop or walk through the mud out back to go see equipment. And these guys are in $500 loafers walking out back to look at a tractor for their horse farm. I'm trying to not have to run them through the mud. They can just walk right out front, the front door, and we got one of everything at least up front. All
right, well, I want to bring you back here for the yard guy. So you're loading the equipment. What are some other things you're doing as a yard guy?
So, you had to unload the trucks, and it didn't matter if it was for parts, sales, or service.
And they would just pull up at any time, various spots.
It would be you would be dropping off lawnmowers, dropping off commercial mowers, getting out new or repaired equipment for customer pickup, and then say our distribution coming from like vendors, allied vendors. So we get rotary cutters coming in, and all that stuff backs down up front. And then at that point, we were unloading on a homemade sand dock in the field, and we didn't have a loading dock to work off of, so the truck would basically act like they're leaving the store back straight up to a sand hill that we made, and that's how we would take the tractors and the gators and stuff that were roll on, roll off, and rotary cutters. It was always fun and interesting trying to rotary.
Hey, I would say this great lesson in any business. And a can-do attitude solves a lot of problems. He said we pushed it up. You know why? He had a problem. He figured it out. He took care of it. He made it happen. That is what millions of businesses are based on, is guys seeing a problem, fixing the problem. And that's a little thing, but it's important that he sees things that way. That's great.
Well, then, that's why, and you can tell from his path, is you go from a yard guy, and then obviously you said you went to a delivery driver.
Went to the delivery driver, and then I was still doing the Lowe's and Home Depots at that point, and running the delivery truck. So on the way to making a delivery, I'd stop and do a handful of pre-deliveries at Lowe's or Home Depot, and then continue on, deliver a couple.
But just for people who don't know, what's a pre-delivery?
Pre-delivery is just the setup of a machine. When they come in from Deere to Lowe's, Home Depot, or us, they come in on a crate that the battery's not hooked up. It has no fuel. You have to lower the tire pressure, level the deck, make sure the engine's got oil in it, and throw some gas in it, start it, make sure all the functions and everything work, and then we put one of the pre-delivered by Everglades stickers on the back, and it gives them a point of contact, so they would come back to us if something did happen to that machine after they bought it from Home Depot. But that was when we would touch them individually, and it's a lot when you think about the amount of mowers that we probably did back then. It was a lot. But I would continue on and make deliveries and have the truck loaded up and ready to go to continue on. And then after that point, like, Jenna would have me come in one day a week, and she would basically have the technicians would give all their quotes for the repairs. And because I was a little more versed than maybe she was at the time, to explain it to the customer, say, hey, this needs this, it needs a transmission rebuild, it needs an engine rebuild, it needs a clutch, it needs just a regular service, it's going to cost this much. And we'd sit there together and we'd tag team them and just start calling customers, and we'd get a whole bunch of.
How did you become versed in that?
Well, it was just kind of listening and learning, like
just being around the techs.
A lot of the guys want to talk about the stuff they're diagnosing, that they're figuring out, because it is a pride thing. You're taking something in from a customer that they don't know how to fix it, so they bring it to us. And we get in there, we set the machine in the shop, and the customer gives a extremely vague write-up of what we're trying to fix, and then we test the machine and make sure everything's working appropriately. And if it's not, all right, well, it looks like it needs this pulley and a belt and a spindle on the deck, or it looks like it's only running on one cylinder. We need to change a coil. We need to check to see if it's spark plugs. Let's see when was the last time it was serviced, and a assortment of things. And then we give that back to the customer and say, all right, this is what it looks like it needs. The labor is going to run us about $200 or $300, a couple hours worth of labor, and then we need this much in parts. Are you okay with something like that? Yep, we're okay with it. We put it in a different pile, and we give it back to the technician after we run through them, and then the guys just kind of spread out and start attacking and ordering parts and whatnot. And it was when me and Jenna were doing it back then, it worked really, really well. And we were doing it with just me and Jenna, and we were still doing pretty good numbers in service. Now our gross is a little bit higher, I'd say, but we're doing it with two people helping out the service manager, and it's still tough sometimes. Still tough to keep up,
He and I watched him all along, but he always had a desire to be in the middle of it. He liked it. Yeah. He liked the equipment. He liked the people. He liked it. And there's a big difference between people just clocking in and clocking out and people that liking it. He was always messing with the equipment, talking to customers. So he's always, even when he was a yard guy, he, per se, he was always still in the mix.
Right, because you're either going to run from that or be all in it.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to the equipment, people are usually mad when they're bringing their stuff in, and
you're over there, you're the cooler. You're sitting there trying to get them to, we're going to get it figured out. We're going to get something. And after we got to a certain point, you get a relationship with customers, and you see them often during the mowing season. Just let's call it commercial customers. During mowing season, we see them regularly. They have quite a few pieces of equipment. Equipment all breaks, and it doesn't matter what color it is. So they're in. We're trying to get something together so they can stay running. Either give them a loaner or fix their machine as fast as we can. And we kind of set up a little bit of a speed lane kind of option. So when I was back there and a customer would bring in a machine, and when you get to a point where they're driving the machine up and you can hear that it's missing on one cylinder. All right, well, maybe it just needs a coil. Let's check the spark plugs, make sure it's sparking, make sure the spark plugs are fine. Sounds like it's missing, or hey, the deck's acting funny or it's making a funny noise. We'll turn it on. Let's see what we can find. And you stand there, you listening and taking a look, and all right, well, it looks like that bearing went out in that pulley. Let's see if we got one in stock. We'll just throw one on real quick. I'd rather do that than give you a loaner if I can help it. Just fix it right now. And customers started appreciating that, and we've got them kind of trained in that way.
That was him doing that, not not having to call some technician over there.
Yeah.
He would start training himself to say, man, it might be this or it might be that, because he's watching it. He's watching it.
Just throw me a work order. I'll get it billed out real quick.
That's priceless.
When I'd go look up the part, I'd bill out the work order, and that was the glory of knowing how, like starting to learn how to do all the backside computer stuff. Was I didn't need to hand the paper to anybody. I'd be able to go diagnose the machine generally. You say it needs a pulley, and I go look up the pulley part number, and then I would put it on the work order, as long as Jenna opened the work order at that point, and then I'd go put it on the work order, and then I'd go pull the part out of the parts warehouse, go bolt the pulley on, and the customer's back in the trailer 15 minutes later. And they started appreciating, and I think we have a lot of long-term commercial customers that we've been doing business with for 10 or 15 years, that you don't see a lot of that anymore. If you're not doing it right, they're jumping around. And you'll see them, they got Hustler this year, or they got Exmark next year, or they got Deere back to Deere because Exmark and Hustler wasn't cut and the service wasn't good. And then they just keep bouncing around. And right now I got a customer right now that came full circle. We sold them machines 8 years ago with Riddle. And we sold them a bunch of green stuff. And at that time, our service department was tough and we were lacking. And we couldn't fulfill the needs that they had. And they moved away from us. And I got a call right before we went to Kentucky, and it was, hey man, I need you to price me some new stand-ons. I heard you guys got those new model stand-ons that look like that right ZK, got the more fuel, bigger motor. Price them out, and let's see what we can figure out on them. And the guys over at whatever they're not taking care of us like they should.
And that was the new Quick Track you were just...
Yeah, so he called me and said, hey, I want some pricing on the new Quick Track.
We'll get to that in a second because I want to get to the equipment. Mm-hmm. And all great stuff. So tell us just a little bit about how you go from a delivery driver. Where do you go next?
So I basically went into the office and and it was more so him. Honestly, at that point, I was kind of just doing a little bit of everything back there, and I'd fill in on parts when they needed help, and that was when Barry was up there on the counter. And when they'd get a little overrun, I'd go up there and help a little bit and kind of play just a mediator. If someone needed help with service, I'd intake the service piece. If somebody needed a part looked up, I would do the parts look up, see if we got it, get it pulled, whatever, bill them out. And then it was a commercial day, and you stopped by, and we were. I mean, it was.
What was your official title at this point?
There really wasn't. I think it was just a truck driver still.
The store was just hectic.
Oh, it was wild. Oh yeah, I was the truck driver, and we do a lot of commercial units, like not even just mowers, but we do a massive amount of still equipment, and Barry had orders that were 15 pieces deep that we had to put together, and I'm running and grabbing off the wall and getting this together and getting that together and making sure everybody's happy outside. And honestly, Mike saw me, and then he goes, all right, we're going to do something different, and I'm good, thank you. But it wasn't a week after that, we kind of swapped it up a little bit, and then I was up front in nicer clothes. And
what do you mean? So Mike comes to commercial day.
And
what happens?
He saw what we were doing. We had a lot of customers. We were running around. It was busy, and on commercial days, I wasn't running the truck. The truck was down. But at that point, everybody helped in the morning. We got there 2 hours before 7 o'clock. Got everything set up, all the equipment pulled out, all the signage up. It was everybody's in the same shirt. Just this whole ordeal, because the commercial days were a big deal, more so back then. And then we always had either we were doing food or food was brought in. It was a big customer appreciation ordeal. And that's when all the customers would hold all of their sales, like they needed something for fall or they needed something for spring, they would buy it all on commercial day. And that's when we gave our best pricing, and we would be level, I guess, 3 now at this point is what we were giving out. And we'd have these big bulk orders of 15 pieces for Haddon and 25 pieces for a lead, and everybody would come and buy all their stuff at one time. Well, they wouldn't you wouldn't necessarily get the heads up on what everybody was buying until they showed up. So they'd all show up at lunchtime. Everybody came for the food, came for the barbecue or whatever, and they'd all show up, and this guy would give you a 15-piece order, and this guy would give you a 20-piece order, and this guy would give you a 10-piece, and they're eating lunch while you're just scrambling, trying to get everything.
I remember that.
Trying to get bulk. This is Haddon, don't touch that. This is Elite, don't touch that.
They're just eating chicken.
Yeah, and you're inside just running around like a chicken with your head going off, So
hold on. So back to it. After commercial, what do you mean you showed up and nicer clothes.
Well, Mike said, I think we got a better opportunity for you, and it'll help out the company 100%. And he was the one that said, all right, I think you could do something else. So that was when I was out of the truck. It was more of like a backup plan if they needed to use me to run the truck. But I was selling parts, but also selling residential mowers right off the counter. So I would sit up on the counter and I would sell parts, and then when there wasn't a parts customer or there was a residential customer, I would sit up there and I would sell residential mowers off of the counter.
And probably help with work orders.
Oh, absolutely. And doing all of that was just part of the day.
Nicer.
Yeah, because I mean, it looked like a yard.
I wouldn't say a lot nicer.
Yeah, it was.
Take the guy.
Still got a dip can somewhere.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely had a dip can in some pocket, fish hook here.
Hey, the beauty of it is it's not rocket science, man. Anybody, you watch people and you say, they got it.
Yeah.
I mean, he just told you basically every situation he put himself in, and he got better at it. I pray that every one of our stores has people that see issues, learn issues, dive into issues, because all it does is make the customer experience better. That's what he was doing.
Right.
He basically was developing relationships where guys trusted him. Mm-hmm. And really, at the end of the day, you want a problem solver. That's what you want. That's what a customer wants. He doesn't want to hear about what your problems are. He wants you to fix his problems. And that's what Chad did 99% of the time.
Do you think that your motivation, I'm sure someone watching this might wonder, like, kind of where do you get that motivation from? Like, do you think it was because you are just energetic? Do you really care about customers? Like, what made you really want to be that type of person?
And my wife sometimes says it's a fault, but I want to fix everything. And I don't want anybody else to have to do it. Like I'm in control of what I'm in control of. So if I don't have to call anybody and I can fix it myself, I've won, And I've always been like that. I never really want to ask for help unless I absolutely have to ask for help. I want it to be fixed 100% by me, and I've accomplished something.
But he also wants to fix his stuff, but he wants to fix your stuff.
Yeah.
You got a problem,
yeah.
He wants to fix it.
Yeah.
I mean, I can, a more often than I probably should, I call Chad, because I know when I call Chad, I don't have to worry about it. Yeah. And any customer that in reality, that's what they want. When I call my guy, he takes care of me. Mm-hmm. That's what they want, and that's what they get when they deal with Chad.
You always want to be the relied upon one. I say you. I always want to be the relied upon one. If anybody needs anything, you make a phone call and I make it happen. There's enough contacts in our life that if you've been doing this long enough, that you usually can make one or two phone calls and we can make something happen. And it's a relationship thing. So every contact that I'm calling is somebody that I've sold a piece of equipment to in some form or fashion,
Tell me about the parts counter.
The parts counter was just, it's always.
Okay, sorry.
Was that a sneeze?
No, I don't know what it was. Go ahead.
That was. Yeah.
I said, raise the hand. Hold on.
Right. So parts counter is just a different breed. I don't think we've ever been slow on the parts counter. I don't think there's ever been a day we were slow.
What's it like selling parts?
So selling parts, you're literally playing a game of trying to figure out what the customer is trying to explain to you on versus like what you call it and what they call it. And then sometimes they don't have the piece of equipment, the model. They don't have the serial number. They don't have the last six. Hey, I bought it from you guys. Can you go look it up? I think it was under this name. I think it was under that name. Maybe it was on my uncle's name.
People who don't. One of the things I've learned from being in the parts world in the past 2 years is people don't understand this transaction. I mean, like you go to Walmart and you're doing a return. I mean, everything's easy. You go to a lot of stores, everything's pretty much easy. These dudes and women are bringing in a rusty piece of metal with dirt all over it, and they're like, hey,
I need one of these.
Yeah.
Hey, I got this drive shaft. I'm not quite sure what it came off of.
Right.
It's red.
And they're usually angry because it's stopping them.
How do you not know what this drive shaft is?
Right.
And sometimes it's not fair. And I understand it to an extent. The customer's very frustrated at that point.
Yeah.
He wishes he didn't have that piece in his hand, or she. It's just, I get that part, but it is very difficult. And our parts guys are extremely underappreciated, I feel like sometimes, because they are trying to MacGyver together with the information that the customers gave them to find the part the first time.
And I
Which
think
sometimes is extremely difficult.
That's where you can find some real satisfaction in parts selling, though. And I see it in a lot of our people is when you get good at that.
Yeah.
When you get good at them guys bringing in the parts, that's the name of the game in selling equipment parts.
And Saul really gets excited about it, and I love to watch it because he'll walk in and say, "Hey, remember I was asking where that where I'd find that part on that 333, and you told me to just go look in this area and you'll find it." And he goes, "I found it. And it took me 15 minutes, but I found it.
Yeah.
And I didn't need to come back to you. That's what I want. I want you to keep doing that with me. And I'd love to. I want all my people to be self-sufficient. I want to be there as a safety blanket. I don't want to be there as I don't want to stand over your shoulder and make sure you're doing it right. I just want to be the safety blanket that if you absolutely can't figure it out, come see me. And if I can't figure it out, we got an abundance of people I can call. And we will find it out as a company, as a business. But they've gotten to the point where I'm the last resort, and it usually only happens once or twice a month, where, hey, man, I really can't find this thing.
Well, tell us a little bit about a little bit about residential mowers.
Hold on. You got to finish. You got to get to the greedy part of his story. He's got a greedy part of his story.
Which is why.
Where he whoop, 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 he flew the coop.
Wait, no, this is after. This is after this, though.
Okay,
that's after because he goes.
I want to hear that. So
yeah,
really.
He goes to residential mowers.
That one.
I want to hear about residential mowers.
I love them.
We know you
love selling.
But at that point in your life,
that was. I mean, I was getting paid by the hour. So when I was able to make commission, that was a big change and a life change for me at that point. And I was able to go buy a brand new truck instead of driving my 1985 Bronco. It just.
Which you'd want back now.
I wish I had my Bronco. Right? Yeah, absolutely. Open headers running down. Oh, yeah, bro. It was sick. But we did a lot of residential mowers, and at that time we were cheap then. Now it's dramatically changed, but the market is still flush.
Changed.
Yeah.
So how do you go from residential mowers? Because you got heavy into sales, right?
Mm-hmm. So I went from residential to commercial mowers and kind of stuck with that until I was able to move up until and we had some tenured salespeople in the store at that point, So Michael didn't want me to step on too many toes right off the bat, but we had some tenured salespeople that were doing a fairly decent job, I guess, at that point. But that was right on the backside of like 2008, like recession. So we were working 30-hour weeks and only buying one tank of fuel for the wrecker at that time a week. It was tight. And the numbers weren't nothing like anything like today, but they were harsh. But I was stepping on toes coming in and adding another salesperson. So they didn't all love me at the time. But they didn't want to deal with residential customers. Like they're a little bit more meticulous with their.
Well, we don't have to hide it. I mean, if you can sell the bigger stuff, and
you would want to sell the bigger stuff, higher price, higher margin, right?
And more interesting too. It's more interesting to sell, but there's a large need for the small customers as well and the small mowers.
But quick side tangent, because you were just mentioning the recession. How are like ag sales affected during the whole recession era? Like what goes on when that kind of thing's happening?
I mean, you would be able to answer that better than me.
During the recession and the housing recession, the ag people have to eat.
Yeah.
It was not affected anywhere near the same as the commercial side. Any of those type things, always that's the first thing to stop being purchased. But ag goes on. People have to eat. So our ag business really didn't slow down significantly.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, you think about a commercial mowing, their customer base, that's more of a luxury option. People can cut their own grass. They can buy their own mower. And most folks are capable of cutting their own grass, larger portion of the population. They just choose not to.
It might have during that time they might have been cutting the sprinklers off.
Yeah,
they said, "I don't have a mower. I'm not paying. We're gonna have dirt in the yard."
It was wild back then. But yeah, commercial mowing people were fixing 8-year-old mowers instead of replacing them. Now we get to the point where that doesn't really happen. 3 to 4-year-old mowers are being replaced these days instead of fixing them and repowering them. We were putting motors and rebuilding motors back then. Now we don't really do that anymore. Customers swap them out.
And when you first started, like as a sales guy, how did you build your customer base? Were they just walking in, or you?
it was a lot of walk-ins, and it was a lot of folks, and there was a lot of fights that sort of happened. It was customers that I had earned their trust through service, but I wasn't selling equipment, so they're buying from Kip or Rick or Cal or whoever was selling up there at that time. So they're purchasing from existing salespeople, and then when I became a salesperson, they didn't necessarily want to work with Rick or Kip or Cal. They wanted to maybe work with me instead. And there were some ruffled feathers a couple times, a couple of phone calls to Michael, but we got through it. And the other side of it too is like I wanted those customers, but I also wanted to create my own customer base. Like Rick has a great black book of customers that he's been working with for 20 years. And Kip kind of had that, and Cal had his lifers, diehards, that were his customers. And I wanted to have my own black book. I didn't want to rely on business that other people have won. So once I finally got the work truck, and we graduated from selling residential and kind of commercial mowers to dipping my toe into selling some compact tractors with arena drags or what have you, and selling into Wellington, I would have to talk to Uncle Tom first, and we'd make sure we're choosing the right tractor with the right drag. And so we're not buying back a tractor in a couple of weeks when it doesn't do what the customer wants to do. And I mean, there's no one better to learn from when it comes to the equine side of our business than Tom.
There's a guy at your store named Uncle Tom.
Uncle Tom, that's right.
I don't think anyone watching this can understand
who Uncle Tom
call
is.
him Uncle Tom.
Yeah. But he is Tom Schlechter,
Yeah.
Uncle Tom. But yes, and I got to learn from him, and he was gracious enough to give me some of his experience and school me through it. And now I feel like there's no scenario that we can't pick the right piece of equipment for that customer base now, between like what we've trained our current salespeople and what me and Tom can offer as hey, we've done this before, and we shouldn't do it again. We should choose this tractor with this drag, or vice versa.
Well, I want to ask you about that, because I feel like in the parts world, finding the part that they need is like that source of satisfaction. But in the sales, it seems like you guys really get satisfaction from putting them in the right piece of equipment.
And that's really it. It's a slam dunk. It's the same scenarios when a customer comes in and says, I have this green machine and I can't remember what the model is, but it starts with a D, and I think it's got 2 blades. And you got to kind of figure out what part they're looking for and what model you can work off of. And it comes from experience of working on those machines, or seeing that part before, or seeing that a D120 is the same thing as a D130 parts-wise on the deck, or vice versa, or on the engine. And when you get into the sales side of it, when you get a customer that says they got, I have an Olympic-size arena with GGT footing, and I want to at least have a 6-foot drag. Well, we can do a 6-foot mini, or we can do a 6-foot pro. If you want to go with a pro, we need to go with a 3033R or above. If you want to go with a mini, we can go with a 3038E and go down to a 3025 if you want. We can change our price spectrum up depending on if you want the pro size drag with the heavier weight, or if you want the mini with the lighter weight, or if you want to run a 7-footer, we're going to jump up to a 4044. And for us, getting that right tractor, it gets delivered either by ourselves or the service department, and then you don't hear back from that customer. It just goes home, it goes to work, and the next time you hear from them is when they want to have a service the next season.
That would be a home
and
run.
That's a home run for us. I don't want...
They're happy.
And you never want a customer to question your choice. They're using your experience. So a lot of times they'll come in and they're a new farm owner, or we run different style tractors up north of my farm up north. But down here, we got a little bit smaller property. I want to make sure it fits. What do you recommend? And we start asking the myriad of questions, like what size arena are you running? What kind of footing do you have? Do you want it compact? Do you want it fluffy? Do you want a heavier tractor? Do you want a lighter tractor? Do you want a manual transmission? Do you want a loader? And there's a million questions that we can just keep going on. And we try and then at the end of it, all right, I think it's a 4044. And I think you're going to love it. And we can do it for this. Are you looking to finance? Are you looking to pay with a card, cash, check, whatever? And we can base our pricing off of that. Historically, we wouldn't ask how somebody's paying up front. But in the equine world, that's kind of the first question that's almost as important as picking the tractor, because we can base different pricing off of that. We can do a full-time equine price if the customer doesn't want to finance.
You actually collect money for these?
Sometimes.
What about some of the construction equipment? Can you speak to how you decide what's best for a construction customer?
Yeah, really just it's based on what they're trying to do with the piece of equipment. If a customer is trying to do some really tight grade work or doing pools in backyards, or doing even arena work, it can jump from a 317 to a 325 all the way to a 333. Like we have one arena customer that loves 333s and 331s. And then we got another guy that likes 317s and 325s. He wants the smaller machine for the refined work, and he uses a dozer to push out his large stretches. But then we have a customer that doesn't have a dozer, and he wants to run a 333, and he wants to push his large stretches with that. So it's kind of just asking the questions. And luckily for us, a lot of those customers, they already have a really good idea of what they're looking for because they've done the research, and there is a lot of different manufacturers locally that make a decent machine aside from ours. So if you want a great machine, you buy ours. If you want a decent machine, there's a lot of options. So they've already looked at the orange guys, the white guys, the other yellow guys, and then our machines, and they're trying to figure out which one's going to fit best. And then in that world, service is most important. We've won a lot of customers over, a lot of sales over from other manufacturers just on the basis for service. And we're not the cheapest. Almost never are we the cheapest. But we have a really good service department here specifically in Loxahatchee that our guys, almost everybody in our shop other than one or two I would give them a 333 or a 325 to work on, and I'm not worried. They'll figure it out.
What would you tell a customer that's like, look, man, I've priced everybody out. You guys are $2,000 more expensive than the rest of it.
And then I would sit and I would prove to them why we're worth the $2,000. Our service, our readiness on parts, our loaner fleet on the CCE side, which almost nobody does anything like that. They have rental, but they don't have loaner. We do a loaner when it's failed under warranty. And that's a huge investment for a company to just own those machines just to loan them out, not to make money off them.
And he mentioned parts in stock, the amount of parts in stock.
And then price on parts.
John Deere's availability of parts, if we don't have it, next day availability over 96% of the time. And, and I think there are a lot of cases also where John Deere has this image of being the most expensive. And there are cases where we're not the most expensive. He said we are a lot of times, but a lot of times when you compare to some of the other premium brands, we're right in line, if not cheaper in some instances. Mm-hmm. So I think sometimes John Deere gets this name of it's ultra expensive. And in this world that he's dealing in, we can be very competitive, at time of sale, and especially when you add in all of the other factors that he mentioned there. We take a lot of pride in the fact that service, we understand service because we didn't start in the equipment business. We started in agriculture, so we understand the importance of service. No matter what industry you're in, if we can't fix it and keep that guy doing whatever he needs to be doing, we don't deserve to be in business. That is fantastic that he sees it that way, because that's really how it is.
Okay, so where do you go from, you become a residential mower salesman, and obviously you just spoke about the different, obviously the people understand you start to sell the larger stuff. Mm-hmm. Tell us about what happens from there.
So at that point, Rick Puig gets a new truck. I get the 6.0. And at that point, we, the old F-250 that we had, and we had sort of created a call report scenario. We were on the backside of the recession. So, we were trying to increase business, bring customers back into the fold that might have left or what have you. So we kind of split territories, and one guy gets south, one guy gets north, and I got the north territory, and we spent a lot of days cold calling, and it was an eye opener for me because I had never really cold called before, and the customers that are coming to the store are coming to see us, so they want to have a conversation with us in some form or fashion. When you're cold calling somebody that's never bought a piece of John Deere in their life, or haven't even heard of Everglades,
what does your opener sound like on a cold call?
Hello, I'm Chad.
Oh my gosh! Ask Josh Coffin about that one. He went with me on a cold call, and it was rough.
I'll say this: I have cold call, and I will tell you this: That is one of the toughest jobs there is.
least
because
favorite
you got to be able to take no for about 90% of the answers are no, no,
Yeah.
no. What are you doing? You know.
All right, but
Yeah.
were you a part of the at this point, I guess you're an outside sales rep. Can you speak a little bit about what a John Deere outside sales rep deals with?
So I mean, we were cold calling, so we had a call report list, and then we had a list of customers that we were hoping to see that week. And we would call the phone number. Sometimes it didn't work, sometimes it did, but you would usually get the gatekeeper, and then the gatekeeper would either let you in or she wouldn't, or they wouldn't. So we would set up the cold calls, but then you're still fielding phone calls from your current customer base. So at that point, you're going to a cold call, or you get your cold calls done for that day, or you have a fire you got to go put out, and you got to go back to the store. Go to the store, put out a fire, get a piece of equipment ready, see a customer that wants to come to the store or doesn't, you don't need to go see. And it's just, there was always a lot of jumping here to there to here to there, and you put a lot of miles on a truck. And, at that point I was delivering parts to customers also. So I was doing kind of what our CSR is doing now. So you weren't getting paid to deliver parts, but that was the customer that you were hoping to sell equipment to. So that's how I picked up Nelson Landscape, and that's how I picked up the Brightview up by in Lake Park, and we ended up doing a 34-piece deal up there. And I picked him up just by delivering him still equipment and parts for still equipment. And that customer, he works for Seacrest now, and I just sold them a couple gators, like that we've kind of rekindled. But he only uses me because, hey, Chad, I need these parts, and we got to send the truck out tomorrow. I need them today. What can you do for me? And you throw them in the truck and you go deliver them, and then you just hope to go see a couple other customers when you're up that way.
Yep.
And it was rough, and you weren't doing the numbers that you had hoped or you wanted to do, but you kept busy and you just kept delivering parts, man.
So is this the time that I know this is the part that Mike wants to hear about. Is this when you had as he would put it, your hiatus?
So, I mean, we got to a point that I felt like there was no more up for me. I felt like I was capped out, and there was horsepower ranges that I was able to sell to, and then anything above that I had to give it away. That would have been a huge dent in my check, right? But we're hoping to make a certain number, but I wasn't able to sell those. And it wasn't all his decision. It was other people's decisions on the ground level. And I don't know if it was, hey, he's not ready for it, or hey, that's too much for him to get into, or we got enough people doing it already. I felt like when I got to a certain point, every turn I would turn, I wasn't able to go up.
Yeah.
And I just got married, and we were having a kid, and I felt like it was getting to the point where I wasn't going to be able to move up through the company, through the ranks. And all in all, that's what we're really here to do. Nobody wants to stay in the same position their whole career if they can help it. I mean, there might be some people that want that. That wasn't what I wanted, And I had a friend that lived in Kentucky that I went to the police academy with, and I had vacationed up there once or twice. And I took Rochelle, and she said, I love it. And I made a couple phone calls to the Deere dealer in Lexington, and I went up there.
And you left us.
I left you guys.
That is.
I actually cried for 3 days.
Hard to believe. But I went to Lexington, and it was a great experience. I've never worked for a dealership, and I felt like the struggles that these salesmen up there had to have picking a manufacturer to peddle to a customer.
Let's really
So that's where I struggled, because for me, I'm a Deere guy, so I choose Deere first. Well, you also choose money. And if there's not Deere on site, but there's an orange one, you might lean towards the orange one just to get a sale. And then you just start refining how you can sell something,
So he said it was a John Deere dealer, but they sold
Kubota, Cub Cadet, Exmark,
So it's a multi-line deal.
Ferris, and they're a great dealership. Don't get me wrong, great family-run dealership, and that's why there was larger John Deere dealers that were surrounding them. That I could have made the same kind of phone call to and possibly went to them maybe. But I chose this dealership because they've been in business for 50 years. Same family.
But I would say the benefits of that, what he chose at that moment, further solidified the quality of his ability to sell anything.
Absolutely.
Because his breadth of knowledge became so much broader. It's in his toolbox. It has filled his toolbox with even more knowledge of equipment, because he wasn't just him talking about it then. He was selling all of it. That to me was fantastic. That part of it was fantastic.
And you got to see some of the price spectrums, So, I mean, there are some stuff that's different, but we're very, very similar. You look at the comparable piece on a different manufacturer, it's not jaw-droppingly different. We sell on a different wavelength. We do it a different way with margin, and they work a lot off of map pricing. So that's something, well, this is what we're selling it for, no deviation. Well, I feel like sometimes that could benefit us, and then sometimes you need to deviate. You need to change up the way you're doing it for this specific customer, and sometimes it would lose deals, and sometimes it wouldn't. Sometimes, all right, screw it, I guess I'll just pay that money. I'll pay what you're asking. But you got to see the major failure points on other manufacturers, and
If at that time someone came in, they're looking for a compact tractor, you had every brand on site.
I still chose Deere. And it was funny because when a Deere customer would come in, they say, hey, I'm looking for a 1025 or I'm looking for a 3038. Most of the guys at the store would just say, hey, go see Chad. He knows he's got that, And I didn't love selling Kubota, quite frankly, and it wasn't anything necessarily about the manufacturer, but I've been selling against Kubota for most of my life, and learning the ins and outs of John Deere. There's almost always a way to fix a customer issue on John Deere. And then Kubota, they make a product that I think is a touch inferior than what we're used to, So I would sell it if I needed to, but it got to a point where you sell what you have, right? So we sold a lot of Kubota compact construction equipment because we didn't have a lot of John Deere compact construction equipment. So I sold a lot of it. I sold a lot of SVL 95s, a lot of SVL 75s. Even when the new 65s came out, I sold a lot of those,
You were a sales guy at the dealership?
Yeah, only ever a sales guy. And I was outside sales only. I didn't have an actual office inside the facility. They set me up with a truck and a laptop and a cell phone and everything. And then and that was a new customer base. Like, there was nothing handed. There wasn't any, hey, these are Chad's customers, so-and-so retired. It was, hey, we already have a great group. You need to create a customer base. And I went and did, and the funniest part was I got caught putting cards on mailboxes in the most rural part of town. And the guy that caught me putting a card on his mailbox, he goes, hey, what are you doing? I said, just trying to sell tractors, man. And I get out of the truck, give him a card. 20 degrees, something I'm not used to. It's extremely cold, And he goes, well, if you sell this tractor I got back here at the farm, I'll buy a cutter off of you. But I got this tractor that nobody can give me a decent number on, and I'll buy a 15-foot cutter of woods from you. I was like, all right, deal. So I drive over to the farm, and it's an old 7330 or something like that. Had a little transmission issue or two, a couple Christmas tree lights on in the dash, but I sent it to good old Doug Ward, and he moved it from Kentucky to wherever his next auction was at, and that was it. And he gave me that was the key to that county. Their family had been there so long that I sold to him, and then his brother and him farmed together, and then his best friend was behind their farm, and his dad bought a Gator or a Kubota RTV 1100, and then his aunt or grandma bought something, and everybody, it was kind of like how this place is. You talk to one guy and you take care of one person, they pass your word on. Hey, where'd you get your skid steer from? Just call Chad down there at the store. And that's the way it worked. And ended up, after the second year, we were doing great numbers and some great sales. And then Bo called and ruined everything.
Yeah, tell us about that. How did you get back to Florida from Kentucky?
So I was actually sitting in the airport, leaving Grapevine, Texas. I had went to the Kubota dealer training in Grapevine, and I was sitting at the airport. Little did I know that my flight was about to be canceled an hour later. And I was sitting there, and you called me out of the blue, and we hadn't talked in probably a year and a half or so, or a year. And you started asking me a bunch of tainted questions that I had a feeling where you were leading to. And you asked if there was a chance I would think about coming back if the job was there or the option was there. And I told him that I told you it was not your decision to make that. Your dad had to call me. And he did. About a week later. And
On speakerphone.
I believe that too. But yeah, you guys called me and flew me down, first time, first class. Never been on first class flight before. And came down and we sat and had a good talk and a good conversation and came to an agreeable number, and the rest was history. We moved back down from Kentucky. It was almost 2 years to the date. It was we left November of 17 and returned November of 19.
Now we want to hear about the site manager, right? So, what are some of the struggles of managing? Now you're running the show at not a turf dealership, but an all-around. You sell the complete portfolio of John Deere minus the larger construction equipment. You sell everything from large ag tractors all the way down to residential mowers. And what are some of the struggles you face on a day-to-day?
Well, I mean, for starters, for us at our store, we have such a wide array of customer base that we get the customer that's unhappy because their battery died in their residential lawnmower, and then we get the customer that why is there transmission issue with my $100,000 tractor? I just got it 6 months ago. So yeah, right, 200, 300,000 tractor. And we jump around with that, and for us, it doesn't matter what the problem is, and I know Ariel agrees, and the girls in service agree that it doesn't matter if the customer has a push lawnmower or if they have a 9000 series. It's all the same issue, and I feel like we treat them the same way, to an extent, obviously, but the trials and tribulations we have is literally just dealing with customers and trying to keep them happy. They get to a point where when they come and see us on the service side, it's normally not for a good reason, and it's because something broke. And they come in and it could be simple, but it doesn't really matter. They're seeing us because something happened and they're not cutting their grass, using their side by side, using their tractor, what have you, and we have to do everything we can to make them smile as they're leaving, and I feel like we do a pretty good job with that. Keeping the personnel, the employees, the associates, keeping everybody happy. Everybody's got different personalities, and we fight that. We fight it on occasion, but everybody's got different personalities. Everybody thinks a different way, breathes a different way. So it's trying to keep everybody happy to where nobody's strangling anybody, and
well, what seems interesting about the dealership, or like y'all's dealership and John Deere dealerships in particular, I mean, even equipment dealerships, car dealerships, is that everyone's got a job to do, and as long as you can fit everybody into their particular jobs, it seems like, in the morning you start up and everyone's kind of talking to each other, but everybody gets caught up in their day-to-day activities and they're just off to the races. Yeah. It's definitely an energetic job.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I've had a lot of jobs, and the John Deere dealership culture is you get to work and you're moving around, you're talking, you're moving fast, just doing things.
Well, it's one of those things, if you're sitting, you're dying, like if you're not moving, feels like you're not doing nothing. And everybody that's circling around you notices that, and nobody wants to be the odd person out. So everybody's moving and going and doing, and there's always trash to pick up. There's always trash to take out. There's always the bathroom needs to be clean. I called Ashley earlier. She's responsible for answering service phone calls, and I walk out of my office and she's cleaning the coffee pot. We do have a store, somebody that comes by and cleans the store every weekend, and I didn't have to ask her. She was just over there doing it. And that's just the way she sees it. She saw I was getting a little ratty, and she thought the pot needed to be cleaned. So she dumps all the coffee out, cleans it out, gets the vinegar in her brush she brought in, and she cleans it. She doesn't even drink coffee, but she just does it, And for me, it's that kind of stuff that I don't have to ask. I'm finally at the point that I don't have to ask anymore. Everybody's in such a rhythm now that they see something sitting on the floor in the showroom that a customer dropped, they just pick it up and throw it away. Trash or receipts, or they don't leave a battery out on the counter that a customer's dropping off for a core. We used to have a pile of core charge stuff that we'd have to send back. Now we have an exact bin location, and as soon as the customer drops off, they take it here and put it there. And in the past, it wasn't always like that. And it drove me nuts because it takes literally 1 week of that and the store looks like a wreck, and we're better than that. We're charging a premium. We need to look the part.
How do you, can you talk a little bit about service technicians? I know one of the big struggles with a lot of equipment dealerships in general is just finding good service technicians.
So right now it's a huge struggle. We've had an ad out to add another person for 2 months now, and we have had quite literally 0 applicants. And I don't know what the rhyme or reason to that is. Maybe there's nobody really looking. Maybe I don't know. I don't know what the issue is. But our service technicians at the store, our guys are the lifeblood of the store. We can't sell if service isn't there. And we have finally got to a point where our store has, in my opinion, the best technicians in the group of technicians in the company. And we don't have the most, and we don't have the least, but we have a group of guys that will go to the end of the earth for us to get something done if we need to. If we need to stay till 7, they'll stay till 7. We need to stay till 8.
What are some of the good parts about being a service tech? Like for any of those young dudes out there that don't fully understand that role, speak to that a little.
So for our store, we do a lot of training. So we inherited a technician out of Orlando, and then there's 3 other people in the shop. The one gentleman's been there for 20 years since we opened the store, and then the 2 guys that are in the shop now, we're both hired as yard guys, and they were brought in as yard guys, and then we train them to do everything else from the ground up. So they might take out the trash for a couple weeks, and then next week they're putting together a residential mower. Then the next week they're pre-delivering a gator, or they're moving tires on a 6,000 series, or they're adding a loader to a 1,000 series. We slowly move them up, and we want to have a plan in place for increasing our personnel. And there's John Deere school, but there's no school for a 17-year-old to go do and learn this kind of work before they get out of high school. So for us, all of our guys have started with, most of our guys now have started with us while they were still in high school.
We have we got an intern program at every location that can hire a yard guy for the summer, which is fantastic. Mm-hmm. And again, I think, let me go back to what Chad's talking about. Really, it's culture. He instilled a culture, and the culture he understands and what he expects is what he does. So you could, what he does is implement the culture. You know why other people pick up stuff? Because he picks up stuff. He implements that culture, and it's reflective all the way through his location. And it's reflective in the numbers at his location, because he's taken that store from a decent store to one of our shining stars as far as revenue and as far as customer satisfaction. I mean, he's not perfect. Nobody's perfect. But I think one thing you can never say about Chad and his staff is he's not trying to do the right thing by the customer. That is always fantastic. And listen, I watched, nothing brings me more satisfaction from like what he's talking about than watching where he's sitting today. This guy came from, out there sweeping dirt to he's one of our best site managers in the whole company. And that makes me nothing but proud. The satisfaction I get from that is off the charts.
And I think
I love that.
If there's one thing I could say that was eye-opening from today is that in reality, the reason why you're able to do what you do today is because you did go into the hardest parts of the jobs or the hardest parts of the business, every last corner, and dove into those. We see a lot of kids these days that don't want to get dirty.
Well, I think they also should remember, everyone should remember, you control your destiny. He controlled his destiny by his actions.
Yeah.
His actions reflected in hard work, work ethic, getting after it, positive attitude, and that just naturally takes you to a much better place at the end of the day. You find something you love and you have a work ethic with it, the sky's the limit. Sky's the limit. And he's a reflection of that. I mean, he's still a little unpolished in his management skills.
Well, now we want to get to the fun part. We have just a few minutes left. We have a few random questions for Chad.
Oh, boy.
And here we go. So, Chad, this one's actually not as random. But if you could give one piece of advice to someone looking to start a career in the equipment industry, what would it be?
One piece of advice?
Just one cookie cutter piece of advice that you could tell yourself back in the day? Don't get in it.
Yeah. Go to college. I'm just kidding. No. I don't know really, honestly. Be ready to work hard. Because if you're not ready to work hard, you're just wasting your time. Go to college then.
But I would say, I mean, truthfully, I would say that with anything, you know, that again, if you find something you love, I think he loves it. There's not, I mean, you can I watch this guy. When he's messing with equipment or people, he thoroughly enjoys it. There's a lot of people who sit in a chair and do nothing. He's not ever going to do that. Yeah. He always was, well, that guy's, let me look at that. Let me watch that piece. Let me talk to that guy. Let me help him load this thing. You know, he's always getting after it, and he enjoys what he does. That's
I don't like sitting in a chair. You know, like I like to be out doing stuff and all those.
Question?
Yeah.
Chad, do you spend a lot of time on your picking out your work attire? I mean, because this
not honestly, not a lot.
Yeah.
Well, he knew he was gonna have a podcast today.
Oh, is that? So that was where it almost. Yeah. I mean, the ensemble is.
I think it looks good, man. I only got 1 or 2 stains on my britches. Yeah. You know, I got the relatively clean shoes on today. Good. Yeah.
Wait, I got more questions. What is the most unusual or surprising request you received from a customer, and how did you handle it?
Will you go on a date with me?
Wow, was that your wife?
No, it wasn't my wife. Wasn't my wife. And I turned it down.
She was looking for a major.
Wait,
I
like how he thinks that's the most unusual thing.
I understand.
I had a customer's mother try and get me to take her daughter out on a date once.
I'd say you get in the equipment industry.
I used to.
A pimp. He's a pimp. He's
I'm just not just pimping equipment, you know, I'm pimping hose.
What about me?
Okay, can you share a funny or memorable, or just a funny memory of a time working at the dealership?
Yeah.
But quite a few, actually.
Yeah, I'll say I'm thinking of things that I can't say right now, probably.
Maybe try to rattle them out with a little...
A G-rated version of it. I mean, there was a funny time when Bo came by to pick up scrap metal, and he was wearing just shorts. And he was in it in no shirt, and he was in one of the old Ford Escapes. I think it was Mo's old vehicle, you know, and he loaded down the back of that Escape with a bunch of scrap metal.
The Escape.
The Escape.
I made about $26 off it. All right, here's another one. We already talked about that one. If you could choose any other profession besides managing a dealership, what would it be and why?
Honestly, I don't know what else I would do. You know, I would have to be in this in a customer service type setting, maybe a property manager or something like that, where I would be still the phone call when everything needs to be handled. You know, I love the equipment side, so that's what would make it very difficult. I don't know what else I would do other than sell equipment or do something with equipment.
Here's another one. What is the biggest misconception people have about the equipment industry?
Probably that nothing should break regardless of the manufacturer, and that's not entirely true. You know, we want to hold everything to a higher standard, even the stuff that we sell, but the misconception that something can't break and it's just unbelievable that it does is hard to deal with sometimes.
If you were given, this is a good one, if you were given an unlimited budget, what innovative idea or project would you implement at your dealership?
I would triple my land.
Salary.
Triple my salary and then the land, you know, so we can grow, you know. Yeah. I would want to make a larger shop.
Yeah.
Our shop is extremely undersized, so if I can build a larger shop, I can probably hire a few more technicians and be able to handle our customers' needs a little bit better.
Drive-through parts pick up.
That would be cool. Yeah, get you a sweet tea and
the bank suction thing.
Yeah. Pops out. You get a set of blades on the other side.
I would say stay tuned. Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah. That is really it for today, guys. We're going to. I know we could talk to Chad a lot more about all things. I think today wrapped it up really well about a site manager. If anybody wants to hear more about the site manager position, which I think I do, but we didn't even really get to touch on the tech portion of it. I wanted to go a little deeper there, but we can always bring Chad back.
He's really close.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'll be honest.
He'll probably be-
I feel like he's liking this. So, I mean, I think he's like. The only thing that scares me a little bit about Chad is he'll be wanting a commission to do these things
Yeah.
going forward.
What's my rate on this? Did we talk about that? What's my commission rate on this? Hours. Yeah. Yeah.
Just charging your budget.
I love every invoice.
Yes. Make sure we get that noted. All right.
Over and out.